The old woman touched my face with fingers cold as river stones and whispered that I had killed her 3 times across 3 lifetimes. And now she had finally found me again. I stepped back from her market stall, my heart hammering against my ribs, but she only smiled with teeth too white for her withered face and asked if I wished to buy immortality. This happened on the 5th day of the 5th moon in the 42nd year of Emperor Xuanzong's reign, in the merchant quarter of Chang'an, where the air hung thick with incense and the shouts of vendors. I was 23 years old, newly arrived from Sichuan province, my father's last silver sewn into the hem of my robe, seeking my fortune in the capital as so many young scholars did. My name was Chen Liang, and I believed then that I understood the world and my place in it. I was wrong about both. The old woman's stall sold the usual trinkets: jade amulets, dried herbs bundled with red string, paper talismans promising protection from demons. But behind her, hanging from the wooden frame of her cart, was a single branch of peach blossoms, impossibly fresh, despite the season being wrong, their petals the pale pink of dawn reflecting on snow. They glowed with an inner light that made my eyes water when I looked at them directly. "I do not know you, grandmother," I said, using the respectful term, though my voice shook. "You must mistake me for another." "Oh, I know you, Chen Liang," she replied, and the sound of my name in her mouth was like hearing it spoken underwater. "In the first lifetime, you were a general who burned the village where I lived to deny shelter to your enemies. In the second, you were a merchant who bought my daughter and sold her to the pleasure houses of Luoyang. In the third, in this very life, you will betray the one who loves you most, and the price of that betrayal will echo through all the ages of the world. I should have walked away. Any sensible man would have. But I was young and believed myself brave. And there was something in her clouded eyes that held me like a moth pinned to silk. "You speak madness," I said. "I speak truth," she replied. "But truth and madness have walked hand in hand since the world was young." She reached up and plucked one of the peach blossoms from the branch. It came away without resistance, though I heard no snap of twig, saw no sap. She held it out to me. "This blossom will never wilt, never fade, never fall. Keep it with you and you will live forever. Lose it and you will die within 3 days. Such is the gift I offer you." "Why would you offer me such a gift if I have wronged you?" Her smile widened, and there was nothing kind in it. "Because immortality is not a gift, foolish boy. It is a curse dressed in silver robes. Take it and learn what it means to lose everything you love, again and again, while you alone remain unchanged. This is my revenge, not your death, but your inability to die." I laughed then, nervous and shrill. "I want no part of your madness or your tricks." I turned to leave, but as I did, the blossom floated through the air and tucked itself into my collar, soft and cool against my neck. I tried to pull it free, but it clung like it had grown roots into my flesh. The old woman's laughter followed me as I ran through the market, shrill and bright as breaking glass. That night, in the boarding house where I had taken a room, I tried everything to remove the flower. I pulled until my skin bled. I held it over the candle flame, but it would not burn. I pressed a knife to the stem, but the blade would not cut. Finally, exhausted, I collapsed on my sleeping mat and dreamed of 3 lives I had never lived. 3 times I had destroyed what I should have cherished. 3 deaths that were not my own. In the morning, the blossom remained, and I told myself it was only a flower, an oddity, nothing more. I had come to Chang'an to take the imperial examinations, to prove my worth and earn a position in the bureaucracy. I would not let an old woman's ravings disturb my purpose. I buried the flower beneath my collar and went out to register my name at the examination halls. It was there, in the courtyard where scholars gathered like crows in their black robes, that I first saw Mei Ling. She stood beneath a willow tree, dressed in men's clothing that fooled no one, her hair bound up beneath a scholar's cap. Women were not permitted to take the examinations, of course, but she stood there anyway, bold as dawn, arguing with an official who was red-faced with outrage. "The classics speak of virtue, not of sex," she was saying, her voice clear and unafraid. "If a woman can master the texts, recite the histories, compose poetry that moves the heart, why should she be barred from service to the empire? Because it is not the way things are done," the official sputtered. "Because it is unseemly, improper, a disruption of the natural order. The natural order, she replied, changes like the river. What flows today is not what flowed yesterday. She saw me watching and met my eyes, and I felt something shift inside my chest, like a door opening in a house I had thought fully explored. The official had her removed, of course, escorted by guards to the gate, and expelled with warnings not to return. But I followed her, I cannot say why. Perhaps it was the fearlessness in her eyes. Perhaps it was that in a city of thousands, she alone seemed truly alive. I found her in a tea house near the West Market, sitting alone, her cap removed, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. Up close, I could see she was perhaps a year or two older than I, with a scholar's ink stains on her fingers and eyes that held both sorrow and steel. "You followed me," she said as I approached. "Why?" "I admired your courage," I replied, "though perhaps not your wisdom. You must have known they would never permit you to sit for the examinations." "Of course I knew." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit, if you're going to stand there gawking." I knew they would refuse me. But if no one ever asks, if no one ever challenges what is, then nothing will ever change. I am patient. If not in this lifetime, then perhaps in the next, or the one after that, the door will open. Her words sent a chill through me, an echo of what the old woman had said about lifetimes. But I sat and ordered tea, and we talked as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the courtyard. She told me her name was Mei Ling, that she was the daughter of a minor official who had died leaving her nothing but his library. She had taught herself the classics, the histories, the arts of poetry and calligraphy. Her dream was to serve the empire, to prove that wisdom had no sex. "And you?" she asked. "What brings Chen Liang to Chang'an?" I told her my story, the son of a failed merchant, raised on borrowed books and second-hand learning, determined to rise above my station through merit and study. I did not tell her about the old woman or the flower that nested against my heart like a second pulse. That seemed too strange, too intimate to share with someone I had only just met. But as we talked, I felt the flower grow warm, and I wondered if it was responding to something in her presence, some recognition I did not yet understand. We met again the next day, and the next, and the next. Chang'an was a vast city, easy to lose oneself in, but we found each other as if drawn by invisible threads. She showed me the bookshops in the Eastern Quarter, where old texts could be found if you knew how to ask. I showed her the gardens where scholars gathered to debate philosophy and drink wine under the stars. We recited poetry to each other, argued about the interpretation of ancient texts, dreamed aloud about the kind of world we wished to build. I fell in love with her the way a stone falls into a well, swift, inevitable, and deep. And I believed, in the foolish way of young men, that she felt the same. The examination season came, and I sat for 3 days in a cell barely large enough to hold a man, writing essays on governance and virtue, composing poems in the regulated verse style, demonstrating my knowledge of the classics. When the results were posted, I found my name in the 3rd tier, not the highest rank, but respectable, enough to earn me a minor position in the provincial administration. Mei Ling congratulated me with joy that seemed genuine, but I saw the sadness behind her eyes, the knowledge that no matter how brilliant her mind, no matter how deep her learning, she would never be permitted to prove herself in this way. "Come with me," I said on impulse. "When I take up my post, come with me, be my wife. We will study together, work together. I will share everything I learn with you." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could not read her expression. "Is that what you want, Chen Liang? A wife who is also a scholar? A companion who challenges you rather than defers to you?" "Yes," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. "I want nothing more." "Then ask me again in 1 year," she said. "If your heart is still constant, if you have not changed your mind when faced with the reality rather than the dream, then I will give you my answer." I would have argued, but something in her eyes told me this was a test I must pass, not with words but with time, so I agreed, and accepted my posting to a small district in Henan province, and left Chang'an with promises to write, to return, to prove my constancy. The first year passed like a dream. My duties were light, recording tax receipts, settling minor disputes, copying documents for the district magistrate. I spent my evenings writing letters to Mei Ling, long scrolls filled with poetry and philosophy and declarations of love. She wrote back, her calligraphy elegant and strong, her thoughts sharp and challenging. Through our letters, we built a life together in words and ink, a palace of possibility. I did not age that year. At first, I did not notice. One does not typically perceive one's own aging day by day. But my colleagues remarked on it. "You look exactly as you did when you arrived," the magistrate's secretary said one day. "Not a new line on your face, not a touch of gray in your hair. You must tell me your secret." I laughed it off, attribute it to good fortune and my mother's bloodline. But that night, alone in my quarters, I looked at myself in the bronze mirror and realized it was true. I had not changed at all. My face was the same as it had been a year before, unlined, unweathered. And the peach blossom, still tucked against my heart, still glowed with that strange inner light. I began to wonder if the old woman's words had been true. I began to fear what it might mean. The second year, I received a promotion. My work had been diligent and thorough, and I was reassigned to a larger city with more responsibility and better pay. I wrote to Mei Ling with joy, telling her that now I could offer her a proper home, a life of comfort and respect. She wrote back with congratulations, but said nothing about marriage, nothing about joining me. Her letters became less frequent, shorter, as if she were pulling away by inches. I told myself it was nothing, that she was busy, that I would go to Chang'an as soon as my duties permitted and renew my suit in person. But there was a worm of doubt gnawing at my heart, and I could not dislodge it. The doubt had a name, and the name was Chen Liang. She was the daughter of the provincial governor, beautiful in the conventional way. Delicate features, graceful manners, accomplished in music and embroidery. She had been educated too, but not in the deep way that Mei Ling had been. Her learning was ornamental, designed to make her an attractive bride for an ambitious official. The governor made it clear that he favored a match between us. He invited me to dinners, to poetry gatherings, to hunting parties where his daughter was always present, always smiling, always demure. She flattered my poetry, laughed at my jests, played the kin while I recited verses. She was everything that society said a wife should be. And I was weak. I told myself that I was being practical, that marriage to the governor's daughter would advance my career, secure my position, open doors that would otherwise remain closed. I told myself that Mei Ling had not agreed to marry me, had not even committed to joining me, that perhaps her dream of scholarship was more important to her than any life we might build together. I told myself that what I felt for Chen Liang might not be the burning passion I felt for Mei Ling, but it was comfortable, appropriate, right? I told myself many lies that year. I wrote to Mei Ling and told her I was going to marry another. I tried to be honest, to explain my reasoning, but the words on the page looked like what they were: excuses, justifications, betrayals. I sealed the letter with wax and sent it before I could change my mind. And then I went to the governor and accepted his offer of his daughter's hand. Mei Ling's response arrived 3 weeks later. It was brief, just 4 lines of poetry in her elegant hand. The peach blossom falls from the branch in spring, but the tree forgets the flower that gave it beauty. The river flows on, knowing not what it has drowned, and the man who betrays love will wear that betrayal like a shroud. I read those lines and felt the flower against my heart grow cold, so cold that I gasped with the shock of it. I pulled it from my collar and stared at it. The petals had turned from pink to white, white as bone, white as ash, but they did not fall. I married Chen Liang in the spring in a ceremony attended by all the important officials of the province. It was a grand affair, expensive and elaborate, everything a wedding should be. Chen Liang was a dutiful wife, managing the household, bearing me a son within the first year, playing her role with grace and skill. I rose in the ranks of the bureaucracy, earned commendations for my work, built a reputation for competence and reliability. And I did not age a single day. 10 years passed, then 20. My son grew from infant to child to young man. My wife's face began to show the first lines of age. My colleagues who had been young with me developed gray hair, stooped shoulders, the marks of time's passage. But I remained as I had been at 23, unlined, unchanged, as if I existed outside the river of time. At first, people attributed it to good fortune, to virtuous living, to favorable stars at my birth. But as the years accumulated and I remained visibly young, the whispers began. Some said I had made a pact with demons. Others said I had discovered an elixir of immortality. A few, the most perceptive, simply looked at me with fear and said nothing at all. Chen Ru asked me about it only once, late at night when we were alone. "Husband," she said softly, "why do you not age?" "I do not know," I told her, which was both true and false. I knew the flower was responsible, but I did not understand how or why. "Are you even human?" she asked, and there was no accusation in her voice, only a terrible sadness. I had no answer for her. My son grew to manhood, took the examinations, earned his own posting in the bureaucracy. He was a good son, dutiful and respectful. But when he looked at me, I saw confusion and something like revulsion. How could he honor a father who appeared younger than himself? How could he respect a man who defied nature itself? Chen Ru grew old. The delicate beauty of her youth faded, replaced by the worn dignity of age. She never complained, never blamed me for the strangeness of our life, but I saw how she stopped looking at mirrors, how she avoided being seen beside me in public, how she must have felt the humiliation of appearing to be my mother rather than my wife. I wanted to love her. I tried to love her, but every time I looked at her, I saw Mei Ling's face, heard Mei Ling's voice, remembered the life I had betrayed for the sake of ambition and comfort. Chen Ru deserved better than a husband who was only half present, whose heart lived in another woman's hands, even after decades of marriage. She died in the 35th year of our marriage, during a fever that swept through the province. I held her hand as she slipped away, her skin papery and thin, her breathing shallow. Her last words to me were, "I hope you find peace, husband. I hope the next life treats you more kindly than this one has." I wept at her funeral, and my tears were real. I had not loved her as she deserved, but I had grown to care for her, to appreciate her goodness, to regret that I had offered her only the scraps of a heart that belonged to another. My son, now himself middle-aged, looked at me across the grave with cold eyes and said, "You do not have the right to grieve, you who will never die. What do you know of loss?" He was not wrong. After Chen Ru's death, I could no longer maintain my position. The strangeness of my unchanging appearance had become too pronounced, the rumors too loud. I resigned my post, claimed I wished to retire to a monastery, and left before dawn without saying goodbye to anyone. I wandered for years, 5, 10, 20. I changed my name, moved from province to province, took work where I could find it. Scholar, scribe, tutor, laborer. I learned to avoid staying in one place too long, to leave before people noticed that I never aged. I learned to live with loneliness as a constant companion. The flower never faded, never fell, never released me. I thought often about what the old woman had said, that immortality was a curse, not a gift. I understood now. To live forever was to lose everything, everyone, again and again, while you alone remained. It was to watch the world change while you stayed the same, a ghost haunting your own life. I tried to remove the flower many times over the decades. I sought out physicians, magicians, Taoist priests, Buddhist monks. None could help me. The flower had become part of me, or I had become part of it. We were bound together, and I could no more remove it than I could remove my own heart. 50 years after I left Chang'an, I returned to the city. I do not know what I hoped to find there, perhaps some trace of Mei Ling, some evidence that she had lived and perhaps found happiness without me. The city had changed dramatically in half a century. New walls, new markets, new buildings where old familiar ones had stood. I was a stranger in the place where I had once dreamed of my future. I found her in a cemetery on the outskirts of the city, in the section reserved for scholars and minor nobility. Her stone was simple but well maintained, carved with her name and a brief epitaph. Mei Ling, who lived as she wished, and let no door remain closed. I knelt before her grave and wept as I had not wept in decades. I wept for what I had lost, what I had thrown away, what I could never reclaim. I wept for her dreams that had been denied, for the life we might have built together. I wept for myself, for the coward I had been, for the choice that had seemed so logical and had proven so catastrophic. When my tears finally stopped, I felt a presence beside me. I looked up and saw an old woman standing there, leaning on a staff, her face deeply lined with age, but her eyes were the same clouded eyes I remembered from that day in the market so many years ago. You, I whispered. Me, she agreed. She lowered herself carefully to sit beside me on the grass. Have you learned yet what I tried to teach you? That immortality is a curse? Yes, I have learned that lesson thoroughly. No, she said gently. That was only the first lesson. The second is this. The price of immortality is not merely the loss of others, but the loss of yourself. Each betrayal, each moment of cowardice, each time you choose comfort over truth, you die a little inside while your body refuses to follow. You are becoming a ghost, Chen Liang, even as you continue to breathe. Then let me die, I begged. Please, I'm tired. I have been tired for decades. Release me from this curse. She shook her head. I cannot release you, only you can do that. How? I have tried everything. The flower cannot be removed by force or magic. It can only be released by understanding. She reached out and touched the flower where it lay against my heart. It was still white as bone, cold as frost. Do you know what this flower represents? Immortality? No. It is the price of your betrayal, given form. Each time you betrayed love, in the lifetimes I spoke of, in this lifetime, you created a debt. This flower is that debt made manifest. It will remain with you until the debt is paid. How do I pay it? You must do what you failed to do in all those lifetimes. You must choose love over fear, truth over comfort, courage over ambition. You must make the choice you should have made 50 years ago. But Mei Ling is dead. How can I choose her now? The old woman smiled, and for the first time, there was kindness in that smile. Love is not confined to a single lifetime, Chen Liang. Love echoes through the ages, through all the turnings of the wheel. Mei Ling lived, died, and has been reborn, as all souls are. Find her, choose her, complete the pattern that was broken. How will I know her? The same way you knew her before, the same way you will always know her. Love recognizes itself. She stood leaning heavily on her staff. But be warned. You are not the only one who has lived beyond your years. I too have walked through many lifetimes, seeking balance, seeking justice. When the debt is paid, when the pattern is complete, both of us will be released. Both of us will finally be permitted to rest. Who are you? I asked. Why have you done this to me? I am the one you wronged in the first lifetime, and the second, and the third. I am the grandmother whose village burned, the mother whose daughter was sold, the friend who was betrayed. I am the debt keeper, the balance holder, the one who remembers what others forget. She touched my cheek with her cold fingers, as she had that day in the market. And I'm tired too, Chen Liang, so very tired. And this, so we may both finally sleep. She turned and walked away, and though I called after her, she did not look back. Within moments, she had vanished into the crowds as if she had never been. I remained at Mei Ling's grave until darkness fell, and then I began to search. It took me 10 years to find her. 10 years of wandering from province to province, from city to village to monastery, looking for a face I would recognize, a voice I would know. I was patient because I had no choice but to be patient. Time meant nothing to me anymore. I was outside it, beyond it, until I could find my way back in. I found her in a small town in Sichuan, teaching children in a school that she had founded herself. She was 20 years old, dressed in simple robes, her hair bound in a scholar's knot. She did not look exactly like the Mei Ling I had known. The features were slightly different, the body perhaps a bit taller, but the eyes were the same. The fierce intelligence, the uncompromising honesty, the courage that burned like a lamp in darkness, those were unchanged. I enrolled as a teacher at her school, teaching calligraphy and the classics. I did not tell her who I was, or rather, who I had been. I simply worked beside her day after day, helping her realize her vision of a school where girls could learn alongside boys, where merit mattered more than sex or status. Slowly, carefully, I courted her, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with respect, with partnership, with the sharing of ideas and dreams. I showed her that I valued her mind as much as her company, her ambitions as much as her affection. I did everything I had failed to do 50 years before. She fell in love with me slowly, cautiously, like someone who had been burned before and was wary of fire. But she did fall, as I had dared to hope she would. One evening, as we sat together in the school garden, watching the sun set behind the mountains, she turned to me and said, "There is something strange about you, Chen Liang, something I cannot quite name. You speak as if you have lived 100 years, yet you look so young. You know things no one your age should know. Have wisdom that comes only from long suffering. Who are you really?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. The old woman, the flower, the decades of wandering, the betrayal in another life when she had worn another face. I expected her to call me mad, to pull away in horror or disbelief, but she listened in silence, and when I finished, she said only, "Show me the flower." I pulled it from my collar. It was still white, still cold, still clinging to my heart like a parasite. She studied it for a long moment, then reached out and touched it gently with one finger. "Do you love me?" she asked. "More than life itself," I replied. "More than immortality, more than anything this world or any other world could offer. I have loved you for 60 years, across 2 lifetimes, and I will love you through all the lifetimes to come if you will permit it. And if loving me means losing your immortality, if it means aging and dying as all mortals do, then I choose aging, I choose dying. I choose mortality with you over eternity without you." She smiled, and it was like the sun rising after a long night. "Then choose," she said simply. I understood what she meant. I reached up and took hold of the flower, expecting as always for it to resist, to cling, to refuse to be removed. But this time it came away easily, like picking any ordinary blossom from any ordinary tree. The moment it left my skin, it burst into flame, burning with a light so bright I had to close my eyes. When I opened them again, the flower was gone, leaving only a small scar over my heart where it had rested for 60 years. I felt the change immediately. Time, which had flowed around me for so long, suddenly took hold of me again. I felt my joints creak, my muscles ache, the accumulated weariness of 6 decades settling into my bones all at once. I looked at my hands and saw them beginning to line, to age, to mark the years I had lived. It hurt, this sudden return to mortality, but it was also a relief so profound I nearly wept. "Thank you," I whispered, though I was not sure who I was thanking. Mei Ling, the old woman, the gods, fate itself. Mei Ling took my aging hands in her young ones. "We will not have long together," she said. "Your body has 60 years to catch up with. You may have a few years, or only a few months. It will be enough, I said. "However long we have, it will be enough." We married the next week, in a simple ceremony with the school students as witnesses. We had 5 years together, 5 precious years in which I finally lived the life I should have chosen the first time. We worked side by side, built the school into something that would outlast us both, loved each other with the desperate intensity of those who know time is short. I aged rapidly, my body making up for the decades it had been denied. But I was happy, truly happy, in a way I had never been during all those years of unchanging existence. I was alive not because I could not die, but because I had chosen to live fully, completely, holding nothing back. On my deathbed, surrounded by Mei Ling and the students we had taught, I saw the old woman standing in the corner of the room. She looked different, younger, her face peaceful rather than bitter. She nodded to me once, a gesture of acknowledgement and release, and then she faded like morning mist. "Can you see her?" I whispered to Mei Ling. She looked where I was looking and shook her head. "See who, my love?" "An old friend," I said. "Someone I wronged, who taught me how to make things right." "Rest now," Mei Ling said, pressing her lips to my forehead. "You have done what you needed to do. You have lived well. You have loved well." I closed my eyes and let go of life with no regret, no fear, only gratitude that I had been given a second chance and had not wasted it. The last thing I felt was Mei Ling's hand in mine, warm and solid and real. The last thing I heard was her voice, whispering the beginning of a poem. The peach blossom falls from the branch in spring, and the tree remembers. I have been reborn many times since then, or so the monks say who study such things. And in each life I search for her, and she searches for me, and we find each other as we always do, as we always will. There are no more debts between us, no more curses, no more flowers that refuse to fall. There is only love, constant as the turning stars, patient as the mountains, enduring as the river that flows forever toward the sea. And that, in the end, is the only immortality worth having.